Let's get it. I just float with it. Fuck what you did, I'm at your throat with it. You can learn something, take a note with it. Dedicated my life, I took an oath with it. For the blood of my brothers, we don't do no switching. I run with who I run with, ain't no clicking. Try me, do you done with no decision. Lead a scene like a Mack truck with 4 collisions. Polls everywhere, but they ain't gonna vote dissing. Coming at you live and direct, I don't do no dissing.
Hey, Shalom Israel, Yahweh Bashim Yahushai Barak Thumb, Yahweh Shema Alatham Bashim Yahushai, Most High Christ. Let's clap it up. All right, welcome to Real Time Revelations, the show I do every Monday and every Thursday. You know what I'm saying, hosted by myself, Officer 500 Alban, covering everything that's going on in the UK, worldwide, covering all, you know what I'm saying, recent topics, recent news. And I give you the biblical perspective. I give you the breakdown in real time. All right. Now, for anybody who's new to the channel, make sure you follow, make sure you like the video, make sure you share it. You know what I'm saying? Let's get this show out there. All right. Welcome. I see Kaya La watching. Shalom, Lord in Christ. I see a few people in there. You know what I'm saying? A few people joining, coming out. All right, no sweat. Make sure y'all like the video and follow the page. All right. Now, without further ado, to get into tonight's topic, so this is something I've seen recently where, you know, the current Prime Minister of the UK has decided to, you know, to crack down on crime. And let's see how he decides to, you know, what he's going to do to crack down on crime in the UK. All right, so let's get into the article. Let's get right into it. Okay, so right here we got this, you know, this is Keir Starmer. This is the Prime Minister over the UK, right? It says Starmer seeks to relaunch premiership with the new promise to crack down on crime. So Starmer, you know, he's promising to crack down on crime. All right, let's see what he plans to do. It says after a rocky start to his, you know, his role as Prime Minister, it's not going very well. The UK is in turmoil, but he's setting out a next phase covering economic growth, NHS backlogs, energy, and a bobby on every beat. Now, for those of you who might be watching from the States, a bobby is just like a slang word for a police officer. So he wants to have a bobby on every beat, meaning essentially a police officer in every neighborhood, on every corner type thing, right? It says Keir Starmer will attempt to reset his premiership with a series of pledges to show he is delivering change, including 13,000 extra neighborhood police and a named bobby on every beat. So Keir Starmer, in order to, you know, crack down on crime, or in order to you know, what he said that he would do, every promise, you know, politicians promise all types of things, and now he's trying to deliver, right? So he says he's going to hire an extra 13,000 extra neighborhood police and a named police officer in every neighborhood, right? In a speech Labour hopes will set out the next phase of government, the Prime Minister will detail half a dozen milestone targets covering living standards, NHS backlogs, secure energy, house building, and child readiness for school. As part of a promise to crack down on crime and antisocial behaviour, he will say that every neighbourhood in England and Wales will have a named, contactable police officer. So he's aiming to hire over 13,000 police officers in addition to what they have now. And apparently every neighborhood in England and Wales will have a named contactable police officer which will patrol, you know what I'm saying, that neighborhood, right? Now, you know, this sounds good, you know, having a named contactable police officer in every neighborhood. It sounds good. It sounds like, you know, that could help with cracking down on crime. You know what I'm saying? The police officers, they right there to deal with any crime, any issue, any, you know, antisocial behavior. They right there to help. You can give them a call. You know them by name. You know what I'm saying? It sounds good. It sounds good. Let's read on a little bit. All right, it says each police force will also have an antisocial behavior lead tasked with coming up with ways to tackle concerns raised by local residents and business. So each police force in each different neighborhood will have an antisocial behavior lead who was supposed to come up with ways to tackle concerns raised by, you know what I'm saying, the local residents and local businesses. Okay, again, it sounds good. It sounds like this is a an amazing policy. Now, what I'm saying, local residents, they have someone to call, they have someone to hold accountable, this, that, and the third, they have someone to work with to tackle their concerns, right? Let's read on a little bit more. Starmer will pledge 13,000 more neighborhood police, PCSOs, and special constables by 2029, with an additional 100 million of funding. So he's, pumping money and everything into the police force, 100 million of funding. You know what I'm saying? He's using our tax money and pumping 100 million into funding the police. No sweat. He says these officers must demonstrably spend time on visible patrol. So these officers must damn near, they on patrol, like, they on the beat on patrol like every day, and not be taken off the beat to plug shortages elsewhere. Meaning these are dedicated police officers for each individual, neighborhood, each individual neighborhood in England and Wales, right? It says the boost will bring the total police force, it's like police workforce, to a level above its 2010 peak, meaning you're going to see the highest level, the highest workforce in the police, right? The highest, damn near in recorded history, right? Apparently 2010 was the peak and it's going to be even higher, right? And now, he talks about, different retailers agreeing with the neighborhood or endorsing the neighborhood policing guarantee. So he's calling this plan, this promise, the neighborhood policing guarantee. And he says the promise will prompt comparisons with the Blair era tough on crime slogan. So, he's comparing with, this tough on crime slogan. The problem with being tough on crime or cracking down on crime or the neighborhood policing guarantee is that the police are absolutely racist against blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians. Study after study and time after time, it's been shown and proven that the police disproportionately profile black people in the UK. So now you hiring 13,000 extra police to crack down on crime is only going to enhance the problem of racial profile and discrimination and police brutality against black people. Now you have, instead of a police officer every few blocks, now you have a police officer in every neighborhood. He was just there to oppress blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians. You know what I'm saying? And why do I say this? Do I just say this because, I don't like police or, this, that, and the third? Me personally, you know, I don't encounter police that often because, I keep the law of the land. I'm a member, I'm in the ISUPK, so we don't break no laws. But I know that for my brothers and sisters who encounter the police regularly, there is absolute discrimination. There's absolute discrimination in stop and frisking and stop and searches. There's plenty of stories. There's a story I went over a few weeks ago where, the police were unlawfully using strip searches and things like that. They detained the brother like 3 times and strip searched him each time with no cause, with no what's the word? With no valid reason. You know what I'm saying? I was on the show On the End recently with Captain Karathia, and he covered how that the police officers were stealing from the store. So you have police officers that break the law, and now you're hiring 13,000 more of them to crack down on crime. Well, first of all, you need an institution which isn't full of criminals, and that's what you currently have. You have an institution which is currently full of criminals that abuse and racially profile black people. Study after study and story after story, you know what I'm saying? We see this happening from, Rashawn Charles, from plenty of stories, man. Plenty of stories. Now I got another article right here. This is what you're going to see with Keir Starmer hiring, 13,000 more police officers and a Bobby on every beat, a police officer, guaranteed in every neighborhood. This is what you're going to see. Right now, this is an article from February last year. It says black people 7 times more likely to be unalived after police restraint in Britain. right? So black people are 7 times more likely to be unalived after coming in contact with the police. Now you might think, that's, I mean, 7 times is already crazy. But then you take into account that black people only make up like a very small percentage. I think it's less than 1% of the UK population, or like it's at least less than 10%. But you are 7 times more likely to be unalived after coming in contact with the police. So you now hiring 13,000 more police, you're going to see 13,000 times 7 more people, more black people being unalived by the police. All right, I'm going to read on the article. It says racial disparity compared with white people unearthed by inquest is bigger than previously made public. So, they previously made public certain figures, and then a separate body called inquest looked into it. And it unearthed, it revealed that it was far higher. It was a far higher racial disparity between black people being unalived and white people being unalived than the police would show. You know what I'm saying? Than previously made public. All right, so we're going to read on in this. It says black people are 7 times more likely to be unalived by white people following restraint by police. New analysis of official data reveals. The racial disproportionality is higher than previously made public and was unearthed by Inquest, a charity that helps bereaved families after contact with the police or state. So there's a whole charity that helps, black families after their loved ones has been unalived by the police. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna read on in this report. It is contained in a report released on Monday called "I Can't Breathe," of course, making reference to the George Floyd unaliving in America. You know what I'm saying? So they call this report "I Can't Breathe: Race, Death, and British Policing." The link between race, being unalived, and the British police force, right? It alleges that the British system for investigating unalivings after contact with the police fails black families and ignores racism as a potential factor. So that, Britain will always say, we're not racist. There's no racism problem. No, we had justifiable flaws. Everything they do is justifiable. And after investigating this case and that case, it was found that there was no excessive use of force. There was no racial discrimination. It's just because of the situation. You know what I'm saying? They will always find that racism is apparently never a factor. But we gonna see what Inquest did. We're gonna see the study that they did, right? It says during an 8-year period, there was a disproportionately higher number of unalivings among black people than among white people in the UK. All right, so we get number of deaths following custody and those following police contact that involved restraint. So this is all the way from 2012 to 2013 up into 2020 to 2021. Right, so apparently the white people that were unalived was 86, and black people that were unalived was 23. Now you would look at that and you would think, there's far less, black people being unalived. It's almost what, almost a quarter. You know what I'm saying? It's a bit over a quarter. But you have to take into account, it says to note right here, 86% of the UK population is white and only 7.5% is black. You take that into account, 7.5% makes up, and then 23 was unalived. Meanwhile, 86% was unalived. So 86 per percent for white people. Meanwhile, it's literally 7 times more likely. If you're a black person, you are 7 times more likely to be unalived by the police. It says the report says no officer has ever been found to have acted in a racist or discriminatory way following the unaliving of a black person after contact with the police. So of course, it's always found that there was no racism, there was no discrimination. They were just following protocol. It's just you have to be so considerate because they're dealing with the case on the ground. It's easy to look at a situation in retrospect They throw out all these words and all these phrases to cover up clear racism and discrimination. Even I think one of the heads of the police force, one of the people in the highest in what some of the one of the highest positions in the police force or to do with the police force, he himself called the police force an institutionally racist or yeah, it's institutionally racist what's the word? Organization, right? But of course, each individual case is, there was no discrimination, there was no this, there was no that, all the the police is they act lawfully, this, that, and the third. Where this report shows very clearly that if you are a black man in the UK, you are 7 times more likely to be unalived. Let alone, however many times you are more likely to be stopped and searched, however many more times you're likely to be, strip searched, as we did a story recently, however many times you're more likely to be, everything. Everything, you're disproportionately the highest. And you make, one of the smallest percentages in this country. I'm going to read on in the article. It says the government as recently as 2021 claimed there was no evidence black people were being unalived at a higher rate than white people after police contact. The inquest report concludes that there were 2 sets of official data into which restraint deaths could be placed. All right. It says until now, the total unalivings following restraint had not been made public. So up until 2021, the total unalivings following the restraint had not been made public. They will just say, that there's no evidence to suggest that, we're dying at a higher rate than white people. But they will, they didn't make the figures public. You just had to take their word for it. But when the figures come out, it's very clear, right? The report says, nor had the racial disproportionality figures for the totals been calculated and made public. So they didn't calculate these figures. They didn't do the simple calculations. They didn't do the calculations on, population, the figures on total unalivings. They didn't do any of that. They're just saying there's no racism, there's no discrimination, everything's, hunky-dory. You know what I'm saying? Whereas you go into the figures, it's very clear. It says one set of official data covered deaths in custody where restraint was involved, but other fatalities were placed in a different category called other, following deaths, following unalivings, following contact with police where the person was not technically in police custody, right? So there's one set of data where people were unalived in custody, right, in a police cell. Then you have the plenty of other cases where people were unalived before making it to being under arrest or in a cell. You know what I'm saying? It says the report says that among those, give me 1 second. Let me get the Chrome back up before I continue reading. Sometimes it takes a minute. Let me see. All right, no, so I'm gonna keep reading it. It should come back up. All right. The report says that among those who were unalived but are missing from the official count of unalivings following restraint was the former Premier League footballer Dalian Atkinson, who was unalived after an officer fired an electric stun gun into him for 33 seconds, kicked him twice in the head while he was on the ground with such force that the imprint of his laces was left on Atkinson's forehead, then rested his boots on an unaliving man's head, on the dying man's head. So because he was technically never under arrest and technically never in custody, they don't include these sort of things in the figures. So there's so much unaliving. There's so many of our brothers and sisters being unalived by the police that just isn't being counted because technically you weren't under arrest or technically you weren't in custody. It says the officer became the first in over 3 decades to be convicted of manslaughter for force used as part of their duties. So the first in over 3 decades to be convicted. But there's far more cases than that. But for 3 decades, for 30 years, none of them led to convictions. This case, you couldn't deny it. Before you even arrested the man, You fired a stun gun at him for 33 seconds. You kicked him twice in the head with the amount of force that the imprint of laces, not the imprint of the boot, the imprint of his laces. You know how hard you have to kick someone, that the imprint of your laces appear on their forehead to the to the point where it's, after the whole situation happens, not just immediately after. It stays there until you get what, the paramedics or whoever else on the scene, to see that there are lace marks still left on this person's forehead. And then after that, you put your foot on his head and rested your boot on his head. And this instance was the first in 30 years to be convicted. You have plenty of the cases like it, but no convictions. And this is what Keir Starmer is looking to hire 13,000 more of these people, trying to have one of these people in every neighborhood in England and Wales, because he's trying to crack down on crime. What you're going to see is these police officers cracking down on the heads of blacks, Hispanics, Native Indians, because their bloodlust is so damn high. Because they are absolute criminals in that police force, and bullies, failed army rejects and bullies that couldn't make anything great of themselves. They became a police officer to abuse and harass and unalive blacks, Hispanics, Native Indians. I'm gonna read on in the article, right? The key part from the inquest report says from 2012, 2013 to 2020, 2021, there have been 119 unalivings involving restraint recorded by the IOPC, which is the Independent Office for Police Conduct, in or following police custody, or recorded as other deaths following police contact. Of these, 23 were black people, 86 were white, 5 were Asian, and 4 were mixed race. So even in the so-called mixed race, if your father is black, then you are a black man according to the Bible. So even in that mixed race, that could include some black people, some of our brothers and sisters. You know what I'm saying? Assuming constant demographic profiles over the period considered, black people are 6.4 times more likely to be unalived than the proportion of the population they represent. For white people, the comparable figure is just 0.4%. 0.84%. Meaning less than 1% more likely. Meanwhile, for black people, it says 6.4. Damn near 7 times more likely to be unalived. Alright, it says using and this figure right here, so 6.4 compared to 0.84, I think it's over 7 times more likely. It's either a little over or slightly under. But that disproportion is crazy. Okay, it says using these figures, black people are 7 times more likely to die than white people when restraint was involved. Okay, in 2021, the Home Office said data also does not suggest that black men are more likely to be unalived in custody cases. Okay, so again, they're denying that there's any sort of disproportion. There's any evidence to suggest that black people or black men are more likely to be unalived. The Home Office, the police force, they will all deny it, but when the numbers come out, it's completely undeniable, right? It goes into George Floyd, and the name of the article uses the words used by a brother in America, George Floyd, who was murdered by police in May 2020 after an officer kneeled on his neck for 9 minutes. You know what I'm saying? Now let me see what let's skip to this part. So of course there was outrage after his unaliving, and it sparked mass protests and led police here to admit to continued failings and to pledge reforms. So after the outrage, the police had to admit that they had some, okay, fine, I'll admit that there is some, bias in the UK police force too. As if it's something we haven't been saying generation after generation. As if it's something that isn't blatantly obvious, but they will continue to deny it to your face. Damn near just insulting your intelligence. It says a race action plan released by the National Police Chiefs Council in 2022 said we use our powers on black people disproportionately, often compared with white people. Well, you know, what a surprise! What a shock! The shock, the horror. We know damn well, and we've been saying for years that you use your powers disproportionately. That you wouldn't treat a white person, a white man or a white woman the way you treat a black man or a black woman in the UK. We've been saying this for decades. I'm there for probably centuries. But now an action plan has been released because it's been found. It's we're shocked to say that they disproportionately use their powers. It says last year we stopped and searched black people at a rate that was 7 times higher than it was for white people. So not only are you're 7 times more likely as a black man to be unalived, you're 7 times more likely as a black man to be stopped and searched as you're just going about your daily business. It says force was 5 times higher, meaning the use of force and the amount of force was 5 times higher when dealing with black people, blacks and Hispanics in the UK. You're more quick to draw for your taser, draw for your baton, draw for your gun 5 times more than you would for for your own people, because it's white people that run this force. Of course, they're not going to treat their own people like that. But a so-called West Indian, you're a black man in the UK, you're not the same people. So they're 5 times more likely to use force, 5 times more likely to use force and at a higher level. Like if they use a taser on a white person, it's because they absolutely had to use that taser. And once they tase him, they'll just restrain him, put him in the van, bring him to where he needs to be safely. When it comes to a black person, they're 5 times quicker to draw that taser. You give any sort of what's the word? Any sort of resistance to a police officer. They're using the taser, they're using the baton, and once they tase you, they're not just tasing you, then restraining you. They tasing you, they beating you, they twisting up your arm, they pushing your head into the ground, they kicking you with a force that would allow a lace imprint on your damn forehead and putting his boot on your head. It says we discharged or drew taser on black people at a rate that was 6 times higher. So they're 6 times, more likely to use weapons, and the force they use when they use force is 5 times higher. It says only 3.5% of the population is black. So now this is from 2022. Now we even less of the population, because you have now all these other nations. You have far more Asians in the country. So now we even less of the total population. We now make up only 3.5, but we still 7 times higher to stop and search. We still 6 times higher to use a taser. And when it comes to taser, they ain't just using the taser, and the force is 5 times higher. Good night. Let me see what else we got on this. The Metropolitan Police Assistant Matt Twist, who speaks for the MPC on self-defense and restraint, told The Guardian that the use of force to restrain violent and potentially dangerous people is sometimes necessary to protect the public, officers, and on occasion the individual from serious harms. Of course. All right, so that much is obvious. Let me see. He says strict guidelines ensure the force is only used when it is proportionate, lawful, and necessary. There is far too many cases where it is very clear that the use of force that they're using is not proportionate, is not necessary for the situation. There was no attempt to de-escalate a situation, and it's absolutely not lawful. All right. Now, they go on to say, training isn't, we put these officers through training, and every time something like this happens, they always prescribe some officers some form of training and paid leave, and they're committed to working with communities and to prevent any scrutiny or any discrimination. It's always the same old story. The same old story. All right. Let me see. Let me see what we got. I'm gonna skip to this part right here. So this was a response from Andy George, right? President of the National Black Police Association, said the new figures shocked him, and he feared stereotyping was a factor. You know, that there's a fear that stereotyping might play a part in this. You know, well done, Captain Obvious. It says the fact black people are much more likely to be unalived while being restrained is further evidence that policing is still failing to protect black people. The police exist to protect and to serve. Their paycheck comes out of our tax money. We work and we earn money. We have to pay them. We have to pay the government. The government pays them. They exist to protect and to serve. Not only white people, they exist to protect and serve black people. But they ain't protecting and serving you. They protecting and serving your oppressor, but they unaliving you. They beating you. They pulling the taser on you. They kicking you in the head. Meanwhile, they get paid by your tax money. And all you have to do is look at the history of what is the origin of the police force. The police force was invented to, catch runaway slaves or to deal with runaway slaves. You know what I'm saying? And bring them back to police the area to make sure if there's any escapees, you bring them right back to Massa. So it's no surprise that there's racial discrimination and disproportionality in the police force. We'll read on. It says the lack of a diverse workforce means officers and staff are less likely to have personal connections to black communities, which leads them to having a biased view of people they come into contact with. This can impact decision making, with officers more likely to view black people as bigger, stronger, and more dangerous due to their lack of exposure to black communities. It's not due to the lack of exposure to black communities. It is a fact that black people, we are stronger than them. We are stronger than them, but they will see a child as a grown-up. They will treat a child as having the same, mental capacity, the same, level of strength as a grown man. And that's why whenever it comes to any black person, man or woman, adult or child, they always use damn near the maximum force. They always use the maximum force when it comes to black people. That's why, we read earlier, the force is 5 times higher. They come at you with the full brunt of the law is down on the back of your neck. Is putting their knee on their back to keep you on the ground. They use the full brunt of the law. When it comes to, white people in other nations, they ever so dainty when it comes to them. When it comes to black people, because we're viewed as bigger, stronger, and we're viewed as more dangerous, you know what I'm saying, which is not true. You know what I'm saying? Even the situations we're in is because of they keep us poor. And when you're poor, you look into it. Any community that suffers from poverty, you have high crime. So they keep us poor and they keep us in a cycle of high crime. But black people, our nature is not more dangerous than other nations. In fact, when it comes down to it, if we put in the same situations, we are less dangerous. You ask a Jewish man, would he forgive, or would he, what would he do if there was a, if there was a Nazi, or would he forgive a Nazi? And he would say no, hell no. But black people consistently, we forgive our oppressor. We are far more compassionate than any other nation on the face of this earth. But they label us as more dangerous. We're bigger, we're stronger, so they always come down with a full force when it comes to black people. All right, let me see what else we got on this. It says, for too long, the government and IOPC have ignored the extent of racial disproportionality in unalivings in their own data and failed to publish these stark figures. So they've chosen to focus on a limited data set which obscures the reality for black people. So your oppressor is always so covert. The Bible calls him the serpent. He's down low, he's slimy, and he's a very subtle beast. He's a subtle beast of the field. This excluded numerous contentious and high-profile cases from the official statistics. Rendering these figures and the reality invisible perpetuates the problem and frustrates the opportunities for change. All right, now let me see what we got. I think we're pretty good on this story. It's very clear that the police force disproportionately stop and search, disproportionately use force, and even the use of force is disproportionate. The force they use on us is 5 times higher than they would use on their own people. You know what I'm saying? And Keir Starmer wants one of these officers in every neighborhood. Now we're going to get into another story. All right, let's get into another story. The head of Britain's police chiefs says force institutionally racist. So even the head of the police chiefs agrees or understands that the police force is institutionally racist. You know, it's not just a single report. It's not just, you have to accept the reality that you can't, the police force exists to protect and to serve, but they are attacking black people. When you have this sort of disparity, you have this sort of, disproportionality with the figures, like this is a straight up attack. It's not just, it's not just this thing doesn't just happen, from this sort of disproportion don't happen naturally. If it happens naturally, you should see kind of equal levels. You should see, the level of crime kind of linking with the populations and levels of crime. But you don't see that. You don't see that at all. When you see these sort of disparities, it's an absolute attack. All right, now let me get into a scripture to show, the Bible speaks on this, right? Lamentations 4 and verse 18. I bring the scripture down there at every show. They hunt our steps. Again, this sort of disparity, this thing doesn't just happen, naturally. They are hunting our steps. Again, we are 7 times more likely to be stopped and searched because they are hunting us. 7 times more likely to be stopped and searched. 6 times more likely to use force or use restraint. And 5 times the force. They are hunting black people in the UK, man. They are hunting black people all over the world. It says that we cannot go in our streets. We can't even walk in our streets. We can't walk in our streets and feel safe like your oppressor walks in his streets and feels safe. Like your oppressor, when he has a police in his neighborhood, he feels safer in his neighborhood. When we have a police officer in every one of our neighborhoods, we are fearful because they are hunting us. It says, our end is near, our days are fulfilled, for our end is come. When you see a police officer, you feel like that's the last day you're going to live on this earth. You feel like that's, okay, I saw a police officer, this is the last breath I'm going to take. Because these officers hunt you, man. They hunt you like, like they hunt elk or deer. All right, now I'm gonna get back into the article about the institutionally racist, right? The head of the Britain's police force chiefs. It says Gavin Stevens becomes most senior serving officer to accept discrimination in policing, operates at a fundamental level. So when it comes to the police, they are fundamentally, racist. They fundamentally discriminate and attack and hunt black people, blacks and Hispanics. All right, it says the leader. We read that part pretty much already. I'm gonna skip to this new. All right, so it says Gavin Stevens, the chair of the National Police Chiefs, says black people should no longer experience disproportionate use of force, and that too little progress has been made to reform policing. Well, too little progress has been made because they always deny this. They always deny that there's anything wrong with the police force. They always deny that there's no discrimination, there's no disproportionality. It's just you're imagining things. They'll say to a black man, it's in your head. You're just fearful because, of course, the history, but that's in the past. That's in the past. Listen, that past is very much our present. That's why there's too little progress. They don't care to make progress. They will continue to hunt you until the day they get caught or fired. they'll continue to hunt blacks and Hispanics. All right, with some leaders slow to accept the size of the challenge, and they're slow to accept, how disproportionate this thing really is. You see right here, Stevens, elected by his fellow chief constables to lead the representative body, emphasized it was his personal view that discrimination in policing operated on an institutional level. All right, and he did an interview with The Guardian, and he said it's a leadership responsibility for us to describe to them what institutional racism means and what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean that all police officers are racist. Okay, so now he's always got to throw in some, something to cover his back. So it says the way our policies and procedures and training have been designed and implemented for many years have not had the voices of black people involved in the design, the implementation of those practices. I mean, even this first part, how could you have black people involved, in the design of the hunting of black people? Of course, you're not going to include black people. You're not going to tell the deer or give the deer intel, or a lion's not going to ask a deer, how can we hunt? How can we hunt you better? How can we, unalive you better? How can we make sure you get caught and you don't dodge and bob and weave us? How can how can we make sure we get you and drag your corpse home to feed our children? The lion isn't going to ask the deer that. The lion isn't going to ask, whatever his prey is. The predator and the prey, that they never conversate. Because the predator is always too busy attacking. So, of course, you're never going to have the voices of black people involved in the design and the implementation of their policies and procedures and training. And it says, as a consequence of that, we get disproportionate outcomes in places where there shouldn't be disproportionate outcomes. The most helpful discussion for policing to have in the future is how we redesign the policies, the practices, the implementation of policing to remove that discrimination. Listen, you need to you need to uproot the whole system and just contact the ISUPK. If you want to know how to police this earth rightfully, you should contact the ISUPK. You should have meetings with Captain Karathia. You should have meetings with Captain Karathia of how can we stop the disproportionality with police brutality with black people. You should be on the phone right now with Captain Karathia. That's how you redesign, your policies. They say for too long we've not had the voices of black people involved. Contact the ISUPK and we will give you our voice. We will give you the black voice. All right. Now, let me see. Let me see what we got on this. I'm gonna read on this. All right, so he says Stevens' remarks come as policing continues to wrestle with the issue of whether it should accept it suffers from institutional discrimination, a debate dating back more than 30 years. So for over 30 years, they've been just denying and acting like it's all in our heads and acting like they've changed so much since then. That's back in the past. You don't get no cases like Eric Gardner no more. You don't get those cases like with Sean Charles no more. That was this many years ago. That's in the past. They've been debating what black people have been saying for over 30 years. It says his intervention will add pressure on the heads of England's biggest forces to adopt the idea that yes, it is racist. You are absolutely institutionally racist. All right, let's get this right here. And this goes into let's see right here. Those findings by Lewis Casey in March after the murder of Sarah Everard were contained in a second report to find police to be institutionally racist. Okay, the first by Sir William Macpherson in 1999 followed an inquiry into the failings that allowed racist unalivers of Stephen Lawrence to escape justice. So not only have you been racial, not only are we 7 times more likely to be stopped and searched, 6 times more likely to use tasers or force or weapons, 5 times, the force you would use on a white person when you go to use force. But whenever a story comes out or whenever this sort of thing happens, the racist people that will unalive you or use excessive force, and never, damn near never brought to justice. So you're 1,000 times less likely to receive justice for your discrimination. You know what I'm saying? It says police leaders accepted the findings, then later claimed to have reformed the service to the extent that it no longer applied. So they accept they accepted that okay fine, we were institutionally racist, but we've reformed it and we're not anymore. We're always claiming that it no longer applies. We're no longer racist. We now we equal. Okay fine. 10 minutes ago, okay, 10 minutes ago it's fine. Maybe we were, maybe we are institutionally racist, but since those 10 minutes have gone, we've reformed the service and the problem's fixed. Ta-da! The problem's solved. There's no longer discrimination. It no longer applies. Even when they have to accept, their error and the way they abuse black people, they still dismiss it. We're going to read on in the article. So Stevens said his personal view was that the reports were correct. He said the problems that we need to solve across policing are at the institutional level. They need institutional changes. What you need is to contact the ISUPK. Contact the ISUPK and we will tell you why there seems to be an institutional racism problem. We will tell you exactly why there is. We can show you in the Bible that you are a damn devil and all you like to do is hunt black people, man. You pursue our blood because that's who you are. You are Mount Seir according to the Bible, man. All you have to do is read Ezekiel chapter 35. It tells you exactly why there's disproportionate, stop and searches and violence and use of force against black people. I know where we are. We are in the So they always debating it. They always dismissing it. Even when they accept it, they still dismiss it, saying it doesn't apply. All right, now as Starmer, is pledging to hire all these policemen, and as we come to deal with this in our day-to-day lives. This is the lesson I have for black people. This you should have this in mind when you start to understand that there's going to be a police officer in every neighborhood. All right, have this in mind. Matthew chapter 5 and verse 25. It says, agree with thine adversary quickly. That police officer, that white man, that devil is your enemy. You need to understand who your enemy is, your adversary. That nation of people is absolutely your adversary, and they want to see you unalived and in a ditch somewhere. The Bible says, agree with thine adversary quickly. When the police officer comes and rolls down his window because he's disproportionately stopping searching you, agree with him quickly. Don't try and fight back or argue back, because this oppressor is looking for any reason to use force. He said in the report, it's 6 times more likely to use force when it comes to black people. When it comes to you, he's looking for any reason he can to use excessive force, to use pepper spray, to use a taser, to use this, to use that. He's looking for any reason. So the Bible says, agree with thine adversary quickly. Don't try and combat. Don't be one of those people who look up, the people in TikTok that say, oh, well, according to this policy and this, line section A of this policy, the police can't do this and can't do that. The police officers don't know their own policy. They know how to abuse you. That's what they know. So don't try and combat like you're some oppressor that says, well, actually, according to this law and this and that and the third, you can't treat me this way. You can't restrain me like this. You can't do this and that. Because they will completely ignore you and just say you're resisting arrest, and they will apply more force. Instead of 5 times, they'll apply 6 times when you try and outsmart an oppressor because you think you know something on TikTok. You know something on TikTok, but we've seen plenty cases the police don't listen to their own rules. They don't give a damn. Because they know anytime they abused you, they get bailed out. The IOPC will investigate and find that there was no excessive force because you were resisting arrest. Agree with thine adversary quickly. All right. Whilst thou art in the way with him. So whilst you're dealing with him, whilst he's stopping and searching you because he's a damn devil and he wants to see, he wants you to resist, so he can use any reason to unalive you and kick you in your face and put his boot on your head. Agree with him quickly. Don't try and combat or fight the police. And that's what they've trained us to do because of the history they have with us. That's what they've trained us to do. They've trained us to be afraid of the police. Be bold when you deal with these police. Not bold in fighting and trying to attack them and this, that, and the third. That's not being bold. That's being afraid. And we understand why you're afraid. We're afraid the same way, but we trust in the Most High, and we stand bold in knowing that we have not done anything wrong. We have not done anything wrong. We are law-abiding citizens. So fine, you can detain me, but I will put in my complaint. I'll be putting in my complaint. You can stop and search me, but you will find nothing because I keep the laws of God. That's how we should be, man. You could ask me this question and that question. I'm gonna give you as little information as possible. I'm not, declining to answer your questions. I'll answer them, but I ain't giving you more information than you need. But just know, I'm a law-abiding citizen, and I will be writing a complaint to your supervisor. But while you're dealing with them, while you're in the way with him, just agree with him. Just answer his questions, give us little information. You don't need to, go into some big story. That's a mistake. Whenever you're dealing with the police, just know that this isn't an interview. He's not asking you questions to help you. It's always an interrogation when it comes to black people. He's looking for a reason to arrest you. He's looking for a reason to throw you in the back of his van. So don't ever say too much, but just answer his questions. Do what you got to do to just get out of the situation safe and unharmed. It says, lest at any time the adversary deliver thee to the judge, and the judge deliver thee to the officer, and thou be cast into prison. Time after time again, the second you resist, you get beaten, you get detained, you get thrown into a cell, they deliver you to the judge. The judge says he's guilty, he guilty or whatever, he did this, he did that. You get thrown into prison, sometimes for things you didn't even do. Oftentimes for things you didn't even do. You know what I'm saying? First things first, keep the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High. That will save you from everything. That will absolutely save you from everything because, for one, the police don't have anything on you. The Bible says to keep the law of the land. So if you're keeping the laws of God, you have to keep the law of the land also, as long as they don't conflict with the law of the Most High. And there is nothing, nothing in the law of the Most High that will cause you to, them have reasonable reason to arrest you. Anytime they arrest you is completely unreasonable, and you will get out of it. All right, you come into the ISUPK and you learn, how to deal with these oppressors. You learn how to deal with the police. All right, before you, end up another brother that gets cast in prison for something he didn't do, or for something he didn't do, but he gets abused. For something he did do, but he gets abused, disproportionately. All right. Let me see if there's any more on that. He said, let me get the next verse. Like when you get thrown into prison, it says, verily I say unto thee, thou shalt by no means come out thence. When you get thrown into prison, an oppressor will get 5 years. You get a life sentence. You don't come out of that prison, it says, till thou hast paid the uttermost farthing. Till you have done every single second of that time, or paid whatever bail, or paid whatever, this, you have to pay everything. Because your oppressor owns you. You can demand anything he wants. All right? Don't end up in that situation. Keep the laws of God, keep the laws of the land, and agree with thine adversary quickly. Before you don't want to end up another statistic. Okay, I pray you understand. And with that, that is my show. You know what I'm saying? Most High in Christ. Let's go ahead and wrap it up. Water to everybody for tuning in. You know what I'm saying? I appreciate all of y'all. Make sure y'all tune in for tonight's scripture breakdown class. You know what I'm saying? We're starting just now, so I'm about to jump off the live and jump on the class. All right. Again, I do this show every Monday and every Thursday, so make sure you tune in. I hope to see y'all next Monday. And with that, again, Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai Barakatham to all my brothers. And Yahweh Shema, Allah Thamba Shemi Al to my sisters. All right, shalom. Lord of Christ.
Let's get it. I just float with it. Fuck what you did, I'm at your throat with it. You can learn something, take a note with it. Dedicated my life, I took an oath with it. For the blood of my brothers, we don't do no switching. I run with who I run with, ain't no clicking. Try me, do you done with no decision. Lead a scene like a Mack truck with 4 collisions. Polls everywhere, but they ain't gon' vote dissing. Coming at you live and direct, I don't do no dissing.